welcome. You're watching the Policy Times, world's first policy and development media. We have been, discussing and reaching out to experts, intellectuals across the world to identify and find and see what are the issues that are of very serious concern for India in terms of its development. We, India, a nation of 1.35 billion population, with one of the strongest corporate in an industrial setup possible, strongly coming up with a manufacturing strength, having decent now approach and reach and outreach in the foreign policy. Everything is making, and with a very stable political leadership in the country, things seem to be pretty much in favor of India in terms of taking it to the next level. India has always been a rising power. Now we all, since my education life till here, I have been seeing India as a rising power. The time is right. Now we need to see India as a real power in the global world. What is India's foreign policy approach? How is the foreign policy shifting under the current administration? What it looks like? And one big country that is our neighbor, but is going to be the superpower or the next important nation in the world. How will we deal, or how should we deal with it? To discuss all this, we have Ambassador Anil Trigunayat, one of the leading foreign policy diplomats and a leading thinker on foreign policy issues. Sir has led India as an ambassador in Libya, Jordan, Malta. Sir has also been part of Vivekananda International Foundation and many of the international organizations, national organizations. Sir has also served Russia as deputy ambassador with the rank of ambassador. Before, Sir has also, represented India in many countries as, being part of IFS, Indian Foreign Service. Sir, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. Sir, my first question, sir, Ukraine crisis, which is pretty now everywhere. How do you see India's foreign policy stand? Do you see it as a success or some more things to be done in that?
Well, I think, Akram, that this has been the biggest challenge which was unanticipated by the world. And this is essentially, in my view, the game of geopolitics that is being played out between Russia and the United States, the two major powers. And this is a war that is being fought by very different instruments, even though we are seeing what is happening vis-a-vis Ukraine. But Ukraine is just in the middle. It is not the war between Russia and Ukraine. So we need not make that mistake. And that is the reason. So when you are looking at any situation vis-a-vis Russia, you have to look at it what the other sides have done. So when the Americans ask you to condemn Russia, for example, for its aggression, which India does not approve at all of any aggression, any military external interventions, you have to look at what the Americans and the NATO have done in Iraq, in Libya, in Yemen, and elsewhere, different parts of the world. They've just bombed the countries out of shape. And those countries are still struggling. There are still internally displaced people, the millions of them. There is still no political systems working in those countries. So how can you just be selective? And this is the policy of India. India looks at a situation from a holistic perspective and not from a just topical issues. And therefore, what India has said, India, when it abstained, and it is the maximum number of times on a similar issue, India has abstained 11 times. And the reason is very simple. The reason is India stands for peace. India stands for cessation of hostilities. India stands for dialogue. It stands for diplomacy. It stands for territorial integrity. It stands for sovereignty and the United Nations Charter. What is wrong with it? And India has always followed this policy where it judges any particular issue on the basis of merits of the case, not necessarily just because somebody is a friend. We have great relationship with Russia. We also have very excellent relationship and a global comprehensive strategic partnership with the United States and a large number of European countries. So I think that our policy has been very good, and that is the policy that gives you a moral right to be an interlocutor. Prime Minister Modi spoke to, for example, Zelensky, he spoke to Putin, and he urged both of them to reduce the violence, and come to the table. I mean, that is something that you expect. So in my view, this is a policy of sanity and basically in the cause of peace. And that's what India stands for. And I think that is our strength. And in my view, this is an absolutely correct position. Of course, we have condemned the Bucha killings or the humanitarian disaster that has happened. India is also supplying disaster relief to humanitarian relief and assistance to Ukrainians. So we cannot be dictated around because we are a big country. We are 1/6 of the world's population. We are the largest democracy. We know what we are doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Sir, now and in today's context, the success of a country's foreign policy, the parameters of success of today's foreign policy are, as we have seen recently with the case of China and South Korea and other countries, is how much foreign investment the country can bring and how much in the foreign economic competition your country places a competitive advantageous position over export, over technology, over investment, and these parameters. Now, though India's position abroad seems pretty strong with a very strong political leadership in the country led by Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, how do you see India's foreign policy shifted before the previous administrations and now under this leadership, which is pretty old now in the country? But how do you critically assess the success of India's foreign policy with the trending change that you have seen?
Yeah, you know that I would say that the fundamental tenets of the foreign policy have broadly remained the same. What has changed essentially is the focus and the execution. These are the two things, in my view, which have changed tremendously under the current Prime Minister Modi's leadership. This is a goal-oriented policy. This is a policy which stands for India first. This is a policy foreign policy, which is seeking that we cannot be dictated around, that we will not allow others to make narratives about us. We are going to stand on ourselves, our own. That's why you have this Atmanirbharta. But this is not that we are going to be inclusive. We are going to be exclusive. We are going to be the worldwide. It is with a global context that we are increasing. When we try to help people in the times of pandemic, like vaccine diplomacy, medical diplomacy, you can imagine that the countries like the United States, they were sitting on AstraZeneca 800 million doses, which they were never going to use. Now, India, on the other hand, whatever it has, it shared with a large number of countries, 150, 160 countries. The Brazilian president even called it Sanjeevani. So I mean, that's what a country is about, because we set it by example. Now, when we are telling, for example, the Russians and the Ukrainians to indulge in dialogue and peace, we are ourselves following that. On our borders with China, this has been a major problem. But we have continued with the dialogue and diplomacy because that is the right course to take. A war, even after the wars, you have to still indulge in dialogue and still indulge in diplomacy. Without that, nothing is going to work. The whole world, I mean, we have had World Wars I and II, and third is likely. I mean, people are threatening to do that. So what, in my view, is that India's core strength lies in it being a large, a functional democracy, largest democracy, a functional democracy, which is inclusive in character, which has, a forward-looking country. That's where our strength is. It should be an economy which is robust. We have to develop our own, I would say, global value and supply chains, because that's where we have been missing. We have been far too dependent on countries. We have to create some kind of innovation, as I call India, plus innovation. So we must try to do something like that and be on the top of the world. Countries accept you. I mean, you must have seen in the last 3 months alone, we have large number of leaders coming to India, foreign ministers, prime ministers, and presidents. Everybody is coming to India trying to talk to us. It has never happened before. You are seeing for the first time. For the first time, you are seeing India's policy towards West Asia being more successful. It is no longer transactional. It has become strategic in character. I mean, that is what it is. We have dehyphenated our policies. So that's the change that this government has brought about. We are also today one of the most attractive countries for investments. That has happened. Our business ranking has increased. So there are lots of things are happening, and the cumulative impact of this, because we are going to be the largest country population-wise in the world by 2040. Now, with the next 10 years, 20 years, we need to see how India is going to build. We need to learn to leverage ourselves. That is what is most important, because we are the country with the largest market, whether it is for defense or otherwise. We are the country which is fastest growing economy today, despite the pandemic. We are the ones who are fighting the pandemic with the world, which follows a policy where everybody is taken along, which we call Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam or whatever. So this is what the world looks up to you. And today, when I am seeing the world getting divided into some kind of a Cold War 2.0 mindset after this war, when we will have again the China-led group on one side and the Americans on the other, I feel that India once again has an opportunity to lead a very large number of countries. Mark my words, large number of countries, including from Middle East, who are rich and they're looking for a strategic autonomy. So I say that India should lead the nations for a strategic autonomy.
Thank you. So final question maybe before we go and discuss some other issues is China. We have always underestimated China and always overestimated Pakistan. That has been, as per my small analysis, I find has been one of the pretty much failure in the India's foreign policy approach. And that is why China rose to be one of the leading economies of the world, as well as politically and diplomatically becoming extremely strong. How do you see India's approach on China successful so far? What are the latest policy approaches? And what should be India's foreign policy approach right now? Because we cannot stop China, and no one should stop anyone, but we should be careful about our interests, our future. If any nation which can provide enough amount of damage to India, then definitely it is China.
Well, you are absolutely right. I mean, in my view, the China is going to be our biggest challenge in the years to come, because China's policy has been that of containing India within South Asia. And that is the main objective of the Chinese foreign policy. That China knows that if any country in the world that can counter its rise or counter its negativity is India through its positivity. That's the difference. Secondly, you rightly mentioned about Pakistan. We have given undue advantage and undue attention to Pakistan, and successfully Pakistan has been able in the past to bring us down to its level. And that's what I have always said, that we should not be allowed to react to everything they say. Sometimes ignore them. Then it will help you sometime. And fight on your borders, keep your borders safe, fight the terrorism and everything on the border. So I agree with you. Now China uses Pakistan against you. So it has become China-Pakistan nexus against you now. In every fora, everywhere you go, this will be a problem. In the neighborhood, this will be a problem outside. So how does one deal with China? During the pandemic, when there was a disruption in global value supply chains, dependencies were being decreased. But result, all countries in the world had a greater trade with China, including India. Our trade usually was about $100 billion. This year, we crossed $125 billion with them. What does it indicate? It indicates that you still have developed such dependencies that will require a concerted effort to move forward, whether it is through Atmanirbhar, whether through Make in India, whether through developing your own value supply chains in collaboration with the Quad or some other countries or Russia or whatever. So that's why India needs this policy of strategic autonomy. And that is the only policy which will provide you the kind of independence that you are seeking. And once you have that, then every country in the world will look at, okay, India. When the fight happens, problem happens with China, let me tell you today, no country in the world is going to come to your help. You have to fight yourself. They will share intelligence, they will do this, provide some equipment, not provide some, they will use it as a leverage. Therefore, it is important to become self-sustaining and self-reliant country. It's very important. That is one. But no country can be fully self-reliant. That is also a fact. So therefore, where the criticalities are there, we need to take the lead and do it now. Secondly, we need to develop these kind of plurilateral groups of countries like we have with the Quad, we even have the BRICS, we need to have RAC, we have SCO, several countries with which we have collaboration, including with China and Russia. So I think that we have, as Russia leverages India with China, or America leverages India with China, we should learn to leverage those countries for our own advantages between those two powers. Because see, nobody is a friend. Your national interest is supreme, as simple as that. So we need to work like that, in my view, and develop our own core strengths. At the end of the day, what I'm saying is that we are not asking for the moon. We have been there. We were always there. Let's say 1700 years ago, I mean, for 1700 years, India supplied about a quarter of the world's GDP. We all know that. There's been a fact before the Britishers came. We can achieve that because at the end of the day, the world goes in a cyclical manner. No country likes it, especially the superpowers would not let you be. But then this is your own strength, core strength that we need to develop and be with and lead the world.
You have been one of the most influential diplomats throughout your career. You have been in the news, you have been off the news. And what is a policy or a foreign policy strategy that you have worked very closely of India? And how was your experience of making a foreign policy a success or decent? And what will be your message to our future diplomats? Because you have retired, you have superannuated in 2016, and since then you are focusing more on building awareness, talking on the foreign policy issues. What will be your message to them?
Well, I would say that we have to learn to be confident about our strengths, have a SWOT analysis, not be foolhardy. It is very important. What is the aim of the policy? Any foreign policy is to serve its national interests. That is the primary purpose of the foreign policy, and that is what I follow. In the process, if you have to tweak it here and there, you can always give your feedback to the political leadership, and if they take it on board, then maybe it'll be much better. The idea of the foreign policy is also to make as many friends as you can make. So the largest number of friends you will have, the lesser your problems will be. That is the key thing, because you are making friends on the basis of your soft power, not on the basis of hard power. But without the hard power, soft power also can be lacking. So therefore, internally, while you have to be very strong, not only militarily, but otherwise also, technologically, we have to be extremely important and strong in the country. We have to have our defense capabilities. We have to have our offensive capabilities, nuclear capabilities, space capabilities, science and technology. Those are the things that are good, because we are moving towards an AI-driven industrial revolution 4.0. So our diplomacy has to be a diplomacy 5.0.
Excellent. Thank you. We had Ambassador Anil Trigunayat sharing his views on India's foreign policy, especially starting from Ukraine crisis to what has been India's position in the foreign policy. So a couple of things. Definitely, China should be our major concern in terms of foreign economic policy, long-term policy approach. Short-term policy shift can be there here and there. It can be sometimes South Asia, Europe and others. But we need to address this issue very seriously. Innovation, which Sir has mentioned. This is a society where innovation is the key. Innovation brings wealth creation. Wealth creation brings better GDP and more employment. We have to be extremely careful of that. Today, countries are competing with corporates. Sir mentioned about space race. Now, all the big corporate houses are exploring space more than anyone. So corporates are far smarter and efficient in terms of exploring avenues than states. So imagine what kind of race we will have in future. This will be corporate versus states. So how are we going to deal with it? That is a super question also I could have had for Sir. Maybe we'll discuss later. So these are areas, so Cold War 2.0. So that is again a new phase that is going to come, as Sir mentioned, because the first Cold War experience was different. Now, what would be India's position in Cold War 2.0? So thank you. Keep watching the Policy Times. We will come back with another expert to discuss another issues. Thank you.